The southern port city of Basra is the second largest city in Iraq. The lifeline for the city is the Shatt Al Arab waterway, which separates Iraq from Iran as it flows toward the Persian Gulf. Freelance journalist David Axe was in Basra earlier this fall while embedded with British troops who are headquartered in the region. He spoke to us by phone about British efforts to improve security along the waterway.
The waterway is important because it's a major shipping lane for legitimate commercial traffic, but it's also a major avenue for smugglers, insurgents, and people sneaking weapons and bomb-making materials into Iraq, presumably from Iran. While I was there, the British were stepping up patrols on the Shatt. They brought in boats and were actually equipping the Iraqi forces with boats too, all in an effort to crack down on the illegal weapons and the black market goods flowing into Basra. But insurgents had, in turn, stepped up their attacks on the waterways. In fact, a couple weeks after I was there, the Brits took their first casualties on the river itself when a boat with several British troops in it went near a pontoon bridge where an IED, an improvised explosive device, was planted. The bomb went off and four British troops were killed, including one woman. The Brits' two major bases, Basra Palace and the Shatt Al Arab Hotel, are both on the Shatt, and the Brits also had stepped up movement between the bases on the river rather than going by road through the city, which is perceived as more dangerous, especially before this bomb attack that killed the 4 troops in the boat. But there's still rocket and mortar attacks on the bases that make travel down that stretch of the waterway pretty dangerous. And when I was there, we were scheduled for a move between the two bases when, and I was waiting for the boat when a mortar attack, a mortar barrage hit the base I was at, destroyed the trailer I was living in, sent us all scurrying for cover. One British troop was killed, another was wounded, and just a few minutes, or I guess around an hour after the attack, we jumped into the boats and speeded down the Shatt as fast as we could, all decked out in our armor, keeping an eye out for attackers.
Hamza was submarine meet to Mimraska. Hamza was submarine meet to Mimraska.
In the first couple of years of the occupation, the coalition forces didn't really have a handle on the whole river problem. They knew that insurgents were moving on the rivers, and smugglers are using the rivers too. And this is not just the Shatt we're talking about, but the Tigris and Euphrates too. But coalition forces didn't, and certainly not Iraqi forces, didn't really have the particular kind of equipment they needed to do effective river patrols. They took, in many cases, boats used for building bridges for engineer units and improvised them for river patrols, but it took a couple years to stand up dedicated, what are called riverine forces. In fact, the U.S. Navy has finally stood up its first riverine squadron, its first since the Vietnam War, and is preparing to deploy that to Iraq in early 2007. The Marines do have a very small riverine force, but they've always considered it sort of a secondary mission and are eager to hand that over to the Navy. So the U.S. forces are finally, 3 years into the occupation, are finally coming to terms with the river problem. The Brits tackled it a little bit earlier. They've always had a somewhat safer environment to work in and to experiment, but they're also eager to hand off a lot of the riverine patrol duties to Iraqi forces. And while I was there earlier this fall, a battle group in Mayzan province, which is north of Basra, had begun equipping an Iraqi army unit with flat-bottom swamp boats with the big fans in the back like they use in Florida, in order to patrol the marshes and the waterways further north.